Alright, hey, what's up guys? So we're up in here in the canyons again for another test drive, and today I've got my buddy Dan and his 2012 Subaru WRX hatchback. Do you want to say a few things about the car?
Hey guys, I've had this car for over a year and a half now. It's my daily. I got this car because I wanted a practical daily driver that also had some power to it. I was looking at the Subaru WRX initially, but I wanted a full 5-seater car, and I wanted a car with a hatchback. I like that it has all-wheel drive because I do take it off-roading occasionally. I take it autocrossing occasionally, so I like the horsepower on it. And in a couple of months, I'm going to take it to Laguna Seca and finally track it.
So this car is all stock, right? But the only thing you've done to it is replace the tires with some Hankook V12 Evos.
Yeah.
Which are a little bit higher performance than the ones it came with, I think.
I haven't gotten to autocross with these yet, but I'll get to test them on a track.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm swapping out the brakes.
So I've actually driven this car a couple times before, but never, it was always just on the street, so I'm looking forward to see how it does in the canyons. Yeah, let's take it for a drive. Alright, so first off, the seating position of this car is pretty typical for a hatchback or hot hatchback. Similar to the Golf I just reviewed, it has a very upright seating position. So the steering feel, it's super light, and I think this car has hydraulically assisted steering. And for a hydraulic system, it is super light. It feels kind of similar to the old Honda Civic Si that I used to have, the EM1 generation. You can really just use one hand to turn it, even in hairpins. But once we start going a little faster, I'll see how it does when I load it up in the corners. The brakes, the clutch, and the throttle pedal, they all feel really good. They're positioned well for heel and toe. I'm not a huge fan of the way the clutch pedal acts, because it's really stiff and mushy at the same time. So it doesn't give you a very good idea of when it's engaging. It kind of feels like you're pushing down on something that's attached to like rubber bands, if that makes sense. And same goes for the shifter. Stock Subaru shifters are kind of notorious for feeling very rubbery and vague, and this is definitely one of the worst shifters I've used, just in the way that it's kind of not very clear when you shift gears what gear you're going to, and when you shift gears, it also feels like there's rubber bands just kind of pulling you back.
The parts that they use look really rubbery too. When I saw them take out the transmission mount.
Oh really?
Yeah, it looks like it's made out of styrofoam.
Oh really? So yeah, Dan's looking into getting some short shifter kit from Cobb, as well as some bushings for the shifter and some transmission mounts, just to tighten up the overall shifting experience. That's probably in terms of the driver controls, that's the biggest weakness of this car. And definitely when he takes it to the track, he doesn't want to be fumbling around the gears trying to figure out which gear he's going to. So I think that short shift kit and the bushings will make a pretty good improvement. So originally, when you were looking to buy a car, your first manual kind of sporty daily driver car, you were also considering the Focus ST and the Mazda Speed 3, right?
Yeah.
So what made you lean towards the WRX?
All-wheel drive.
Okay, so is that really like the only reason, or did you also just like the way it looks, or like the performance of it?
Looks is kind of a toss-up. The WRX looks more aggressive than the Focus ST,
yeah,
which I like, but it's also debatable because the hood scoop is also like overly aggressive.
Yeah, I agree.
I chalk looks up to preference. As far as performance goes, even when I test drove the Focus ST and the WRX, I immediately like the WRX better because it feels really fast off the line. The all-wheel drive really grips.
Right, and I think the 0 to 60 time of this car is
it's the best of the three.
Right, it's just under 5 seconds, I think, and you don't even have to shift to third gear for that. And so it really helps this car on paper, at least.
Performance-wise, I think this car beats the ST, even if it might not be as fun to drive.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as like practicality and fuel economy go, I think the ST has it beat.
Yeah, the ST is definitely better, mostly because it's newer. It's got a newer EcoBoost engine. whereas the 2.5 liter turbocharged Boxer 4 in this car has been around since the early days of the older WRXs, so it's definitely getting pretty long in the tooth. And one thing about this engine is that it does have a lot of turbo lag. On paper it makes 265 horsepower and 244 foot-pounds of torque, and it's pretty comparable on paper to the Focus ST and the Mazda Speed 3, but in practice it feels a lot more turbo laggy, and in a second I'll show you guys that. So yeah, honestly, this is a freaking fast car. You don't really feel it when you're just driving it around below 3,000 RPMs, but when that turbo kicks in at 3K, it really rockets you forward. And out of all the cars that I've driven on this road so far, I think in a straight line, this is definitely by far feels like the quickest. Okay, so let's do a quick 0 to 60 run, and I'll show you the acceleration and the turbo lag. Watch the revs as I do this. So there's nothing, and then this car is really fast, and it's not just fast in a straight line. The braking feel is actually really good as well. When you press on the pedal, it gives you a very nice linear feel to it, and basically however much pressure you put on the pedal is how quickly you're going to stop. And you can't say the same for some of the newer cars, where the first like inch of pedal travel gives you like 70% of the braking power. So I really like the brakes. And like I said, the engine is pretty phenomenal. It doesn't sound the greatest. I think it sounds a little bit like a lawnmower, as do most Subaru flat fours. Although I will say I've seen some Subaru WRXs that have intake, exhaust, as well as unequal length headers, and that really opens up the sound, and it makes it sound very unique and aggressive. But yeah, you can't argue with the performance of this car, especially for the price. I think if you're looking to buy one of these used today with relatively low miles, I think 20K would probably get you one of these. And other cars in the price range would be similarly used Focus ST or Mazda Speed 3, like I mentioned earlier, or also Civic Si, which you're getting a little bit more interior quality and comfort with that car, but you're losing a lot of the performance that you get with this. I think compared to the 2015 SI that I drove recently, this thing destroys it hands down in performance. I think on the track, it remains to be seen like how fun this car really is to drive, because I know at the limit it will understeer quite a bit, since it doesn't have the clever differentials that the STI model has, and so it does tend to push. I haven't been able to test that today, but I'm sure when Dan takes it to the track in a couple months, he'll experience that firsthand.
The stock suspension on the track's gonna be tough too, because there's a lot of body roll at high speeds.
Yeah, that's a good point that I forgot to bring up. But there is some body roll with this car. Compared to some of the other cars I've driven in stock form, it's really not bad though. It does feel very planted in the corners. So even if it does roll, it does have a lot of grip. So you can enter corners with a lot of confidence. And the corner exit acceleration is just phenomenal. You can just put your foot down, basically right when you pass the apex of the corner, put your foot down and it will just rock it out with just a slight bit of understeer. And it makes the car very, very fast exiting corners. The steering does load up pretty nice in the corners, but I would say it's still a little bit too light for my tastes. I like having a bit of a heavier steering feel. Yeah, that's fast. And I think the gearing of the car really helps it as well, because on a tight road like this, you can stay in second gear, whereas in some of the other cars I've driven, I have to switch between second and third. And not having to do that extra shift on a road like this lets you just focus on the steering and the brake and the throttle inputs versus worrying about, you know, heel toe downshifting. And it lets you just save a little bit extra time. And you haven't had any reliability issues with this car, right?
No, absolutely none.
Yeah, so this car has what, almost 31,000 miles on it. You bought it at what mileage?
Around 14,000.
Okay, so
yeah.
you put a decent amount of miles in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And you have plans to keep this car for another few years at least, right?
Yeah, it's gonna be my daily for the next couple of years.
Okay. Yeah, I think for a daily driver, this car is awesome. As long as you don't really have an issue with the very bare bones interior, like some of the interior quality,
it's ugly.
Yeah, the interior, some of the plastic panels and like the dashboard, they're made of a very kind of cheap plastic that you would find in a base model Impreza. But that's kind of not the point of this car. You're paying for the performance, the all-wheel drive. It's what Subaru's known for. And if you want that kind of performance, you're not really going to get it from any other manufacturer. You could argue that the Focus ST would give you similar level of performance, but you lose the all-wheel drive, and to some people that's definitely a deal breaker, like it was for Dan.
Yeah, that's more traction in autocross, that's more traction on the track, and if I'm doing anything off-roading, I want the all-wheel drive.
Definitely, yeah.
Not that I'd recommend this car for hardcore off-roading.
Right.
Destroy the front bumper. For looks, interior and exterior, I'd say the BRZ has this car beat.
Oh yeah, the BRZ is definitely more of a sports car, but it's for a different kind of driver in my opinion. It's more finesse focused.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously drifters like it. It's really good for autocross because it's lightweight. So overall, I really like this car as a daily driver slash kind of canyon carver slash track car, all-in-one kind of car. And it's not something really that I would buy personally, just because, you know, I've always had two cars, and when I have that luxury, I'd rather have something that's not an all-in-one car. But if you can only have one car and you want to go fast, this is definitely up there. And another thing I wanted to mention is that with the new WRX out, which I've driven, that car is definitely an improvement over this car in many ways. They fixed the shifting feel like almost completely. They've improved the interior a lot. But what I don't like about that car is it doesn't look as pleasing on the outside, and it doesn't come in a hatchback form. So you lose a lot of that practicality.
It's a 6-speed too, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's also a 6-speed, so the 0 to 60 time is going to be slower because you have to shift to third gear to hit 60.
Shorter gears.
Right, and it has a smaller engine. It's the 2-liter turbo flat 4. It's just the turbocharged version of the BRZ FRS motor. It's a good motor, but this one's more kind of proven over the years, and you can make big power with this thing if you put a Cobb tune on it. And then there's also, of course, the stage 2, stage 3 kits. I've seen people pushing over 400 horsepower easily. So thanks thanks again, Dan, for letting me drive your WRX. If you guys like